Hey, people.
Hi.
Howdy.
Hey, Carmen. Oh, that's not Carmen.
Yeah, I'm
What is
here. Just I'm driving, so I'm not on camera.
Okay. Who's the hostess with the mostest? There's Andy.
Hello.
I'll be back.
It's 2:31. I'll give it like one more minute and I'll see if anyone else jumps on. I see Drew, Carmine. Carmine, you said you were driving. Andy, Kate. Kate, where's your video?
I don't have my video on right now.
Okay. Looks like Helen's trying to connect. If you're able to come up on video so it feels like I'm really talking to you guys. Okay, we'll get started. It's 2:33. So today we're going to talk about some details on taking listings. I'm not going to get too much into like scripts necessarily, unless you guys have a specific questions, we can do that. More so the process is what we'll be focusing on. If you guys can unmute and let me know if there's anything specific that you jumped on for today, that way I can make sure I'll write it down, and I'll make sure that if I wasn't planning on talking about that, that we make time to talk about that.
Pricing would be a big thing for me.
Pricing. Okay.
Yeah.
Anything specific, Kate, when it comes to pricing?
Just because I'm usually coming from the buyer side where you at least kind of have the starting point of running comps based on that house and knowing like, all right, I at least have this starting price of what the sellers are looking for. Whereas I feel like when you're working with listings, like I have buyers I'm working with that haven't sold in 30 years. So like they have no idea. It's really like a lot more of a blank slate than working with buyers, I feel like. So just kind of just a general scope, I guess I'd say, of how you do it.
Okay. We will do that. Anyone else?
I'd jump in on the pricing piece as well, kind of similar to what Kate said. And I struggle sometimes with running comps when it's not like a clear, like neighborhood, where it's a unique house with either, square footage that's totally different than anything around it, or better kind of, what becomes the most critical things when it's not clear match.
A lot of that was broken up, but I got the gist of what you were saying about running comps when it's a total unique kind of property, not in a subdivision type thing. So we'll touch on that too. Cool. Anybody else? Okay. Well, then we'll jump in, and then
Thanks.
I'll ask if anyone has any questions or needs me to elaborate every couple minutes here. Basically, again, focusing on the process, the first thing that you're going to do when it comes to a listing opportunity is qualify the listing. And this is making sure that really that you're not wasting your time. And you're going to be more specific and more careful about your time the busier you are and the more experience you have, because it's okay in the beginning to maybe go on some appointments that maybe a couple months or years later you'll say, I would never go on that appointment now. I don't know how everybody here and how long y'all have been in the business, but if there's anyone newer here or just newer to listings, it's okay to go on some appointments that might be a waste of your time because you're going to probably learn something, or you're going to be able to also practice some objection handling and some scripting. But with that being said, qualifying people, I definitely suggest having a sheet to work off of. From when I was on my mom's team, she had what was called a purple sheet. There was a qualifying sheet for sellers. And we still use that now on the Dickerman team. We still call it a purple sheet. It's evolved over the years. And I'm going to touch on a couple points that are very, very important that you ask and that you try your very hardest to get answers to when you're qualifying these people. Ideally, before you're on this phone call with them, ideally you already know the address and you were able to pull the public record and get a little bit of an idea about what this property is and who is listed as on the deed on the public record. So when you're on this phone call, there's a list of questions you're going to ask, but some of the most important questions are going to be who is the seller and who is on the deed. And the reason that's so important is to make sure that they're going to be there for the appointment. Because the worst thing to happen is for you to do all this work and prep and get there and nail it out of the park for an appointment and then not have them commit to signing because there's a decision maker who isn't there. Worse, you are now going to end up having to rely on someone who is not a real estate expert to then do your listing consultation to the other decision maker on your behalf. So you're relying on someone else to basically do your consultation for you on your behalf. So you need to avoid that at all costs. Next question that's very important is, do they have a mortgage? Are they current? And what do they owe on their mortgage? And third, and this is one of the two most important in my opinion, what do they think the house is worth? That's going to help you a lot with the pricing question that you guys had. I would say you should plan on getting that question answered if you're speaking to them properly and you're able to handle objections properly and establishing rapport properly on the phone. You should be able to get that answered about, I would say 75 to 80% of the time. You should be able to get that question answered. And usually they're going to answer, oh, I don't know, when you first ask that. You're going to have to probably ask it a couple different times in a couple different ways. So just because they say the first time, oh, I don't know, you need to then ask it again, maybe in a different way. So maybe something like, oh, I totally understand that you don't know for sure, but it's what it's worth. But I know you're probably watching the market. And I mean, if you just had to pull a number out from the sky, what would you say? Just even a range. What would you say? Get something out of them, especially if it's one of those unique type property situations where it's not in a subdivision. You really want to get that number because that's going to help you with your pricing and pulling comps. And it's going to help you qualify, are these people totally unrealistic or not? It's also going to help you decide, sometimes they're going to tell you a number, probably especially in this market, that's way low. And it's really good to know ahead of time what kind of conversations you're going to be having at the appointment. Don't get into that conversation on the phone. This is only a qualifying conversation. You're asking questions and you're establishing rapport. And then number 4, and again, these are just the top 4 questions to ask in this qualifying conversation. You're also, of course, asking them things that are going to help you with your comps. And you're confirming the public record. How many bedrooms, how many bathrooms, square footage, is your basement finished, yes or no? On a scale of 1 to 10, how would you rate the condition of your home? Okay, what would make it a 10? Have you done any recent updates? What does your kitchen look like? If they say, yeah, I have done recent updates. Okay, great. Well, tell me about that. We put in a new kitchen. Okay, when? In 2000. Okay, well, it's not a new kitchen anymore. So obviously you're not going to respond with that, but then you're going to get detailed. Okay, tell me, what does your kitchen look like? Did you do new cabinets or did you just put new granite countertops on? Oh, we have new hardwood floors. Great. Did you go consistent throughout the house? Do they match? Or did you have to end up going with different types of floors? So these 4 questions that I'm going through are in addition to you asking information about the house to help you in your research. The 4th question that is the top 2, in my opinion, is once you're done everything, you've set the appointment with them, you have a date confirmed with them, you're going to say to them, great, I'm so excited to meet with you. And just to confirm, when I come out to meet with you, if we are 100% on the same page and you are 100% in line with our marketing plan and pricing and everything we've discussed, will you be ready to get started when I come out? And you can frame that how you want. You can say, will you be ready to sign the paperwork when I come out, if you want to be even more blunt. What I'm asking them is, are you ready to sign a listing contract when I come out to meet with you? And you want to get that answered, because if they say no, they're telling you up front basically what their objection is going to be up front, so you can really prepare for that. Or maybe they'll tell you then, because you weren't able to get clarity on it earlier in the conversation, oh no, my husband is in California for work right now and he won't be around, so we're going to have to discuss it at a later time. So no, we won't be ready. And then you can go backwards and make sure that you can do an appointment where the husband is there, or he's there on a Zoom call or something like that. Any questions about that?
So Lauren, do you do a 2-stage listing appointment or 1 stage?
2-stage. I'm sorry, do you mean as in, do we go once and then go back again to get the listing contract signed?
Yes.
No.
Do you go look at the house first and then come back with comps,
No.
or do you go prepared?
You need to go prepared.
Why is that?
You need to go, and your goal is to get the listing contract signed at that first appointment. So as much as we think real estate agents are so interesting, and as much as we sometimes think, oh my gosh, these people must just love interviewing agents. They told me they're interviewing 7 agents. They don't. They want it to be done. So the second that they really connect with someone and they hear the price they want and they hear the process that makes them comfortable, they're going to sign. So your goal is to be the one who makes them feel that way first. I'm just reading the chat group. How they would rate. Yeah. Lana said, I love asking the seller how they would rate their home from a 1 to 10 and what would make it a 10. Yeah, that's a great question to ask, because a lot of times they're going to say, well, I really need new carpets. And that's just helping you, so that when you have to tell them they need new carpets, you're not telling them, you're saying, yeah, and just like you said, you're so on top of it. You're right. You need new carpets. And you're not the bad guy. You're just agreeing with what they said. Drew said, what process are you selling? What do you mean by that, Drew?
Well, you said you're trying to connect with them, you've given them the price, and they love that price. But I am new, so you said, and then as long as they buy in on your process, that's what I'm looking for. Okay. I know what I'm going to do, but I don't know that it's all right.
Got it. Okay. Well, let's get on to the next step here, and we'll kind of get into the actual appointment a little bit. And then Drew, if I don't answer that for you when we get to that, can you just please let me know and we can dive into that a little more. So you're going, at the end of that qualifying conversation, the goal is to make sure you have an appointment set. That's great. That's huge to have a listing appointment set. It's on the calendar. You've confirmed who's going to be there. You understand a good bit about the house. You understand ideally a range at least, or a vague idea of what they're hoping to sell for. And you understand that they are going to be ready to sign and commit to move forward at that appointment. Or if they're not 100% sure, you have an idea of what their reservation may be. So you set the appointment. And then next, what you're going to do, if you don't already know from doing that, a lot of times, especially if you're an experienced agent or if you just happen to be very familiar with the neighborhood or location, from doing that purple sheet or that qualifying sheet, okay, this is a good appointment. We're good here. You might have to go back and really dive in and do some more comps though. So you're going to go back in and you're going to make sure that this is a realistic seller and that the pricing is right. Or if they said, we've had people say literally 800,000. And we go look and it's a solid 600, and there's just no bridging that gap. And you need to then make a decision. Do I want to make this a learning experience and do this anyway and practice? Or am I going to say, no, this isn't worth my time? A lot of times for me and for the agents on our team, that really comes down to the seller. If the seller was really pleasant on the phone and we feel like they're willing to learn and they're learning based and they're team oriented, maybe we'll still go on that appointment. Maybe they just need help getting there. But if you're talking to that person and you can just tell that they're a nasty person, and you've had those people that they're like, they'll just say nasty things on the phone, or we've had people say, well, honestly, you're a woman, so I probably won't list with you anyway. probably not going to go on that appointment if they're also unrealistic on price. So you guys have to then make that appointment. If after you do that qualifying sheet, then you go run your comps and you're like, gosh, this is just looking way off here. Or they tell you what their mortgage balance is, and it's basically what the house is worth, and they told you they don't have the cash, like they don't have it, they told you that. Again, you have to make that decision. So let's say you make the decision, you're going to go on this appointment. Now you're going to want to send them your pre-listing packet. If you're not able to physically hand deliver that, or have a runner or a team member or a partner or a kid, you know, or your college kid deliver that for you, or say the appointment is, you know, you ended up setting a last minute appointment and it's 5 o'clock and you're meeting with them at 10 a.m. tomorrow and you just don't have the time to get it there. Ideally, get it there. Go drop it off that night. If you can't, then email it to them. But if you can't physically drop it off, then you need to email them something. Because now you're doing two things that have possibly set you apart from the rest of the people they're interviewing. You've had a solid 30 to 40 minute conversation on the phone with them, asking them questions and letting them talk about their home. And then now you've sent them marketing materials and information up front. So these are two opportunities that you've had to stand out. So take advantage of them. In your pre-list packet, things to consider including in that would be your stats. If you're a newer agent, then include stats for your office or include stats for, you know, Westchester and Exton, or include stats for Keller Williams, or all of the above. But if you're a newer agent, you're probably in the coaching program, and Anne-Marie can definitely help you with that. So you're going to include stats. You're going to include what sets you apart, ideally. You're going to include perhaps references or reviews / testimonials. Something that I really love in my team's packet and our listing divisions packet is we have a before and after, where it shows listings that were listed on the market that did not sell, and then what they looked like when we put them on the market. So it shows them from looking cluttered, dark, maybe ugly paint colors, plants all over the place, ugly blankets everywhere, before, and then after maybe shows just a couple little tweaks and they just look so much better. We include that in ours. So if you do any kind of staging or listing presentation is something that is really something that's a value proposition that sets you apart, then you could include that. You should include a personal letter. So when they open that packet, the first thing should be Dear Mr. and Mrs. And then the rest can be templated. I look forward to meeting with you. Put in the actual appointment, you know, so it looks like it's a personalized letter. And then lastly, you should include their homework. We call their homework, which is going to be the seller's disclosure, the mortgage payoff form, perhaps a home warranty form, perhaps a consumer notice. You don't want to include anything in there that's going to give them any red flags or it's going to make them uncomfortable. So I would perhaps not put in there like a social security authorization quite yet. Any questions on the pre-list packet?
Hey, this is Carmen. Quick question for you on the pre-list packet. Do you find that the disclosure, the seller's disclosure, that early in the process ever kind of scares them off? Because it's a long form. It can be a little overwhelming if you haven't sold a house or sold a house in a long time.
Yeah, that's a good question. I really like to include it because I think most sellers usually know that there's some sort of disclosure they have to fill out. And it really is also going to come down to your personality types, you know, on the disc to make it simple. So someone who's a D, they're going to probably look at it and be like, I'm not doing that yet. No. And then someone who's a C is going to be like, oh, what's this? I really need to look at this. And I need to know, is this something I need to do now? Or what is, they're going to read it and they're going to then very clearly from the first paragraph understand what that is. An S is probably going to, you know, be similar. And an I, you know, depending on what their other behavioral style is, will depend if they go more of the D route or they go more of like the S or C route. So everybody's going to be different. I will tell you that the reason that I love including the seller's disclosure is because I will say about 20% of the listing appointments that I would walk into, if they had that sitting out, filled out on the table with a key, yay! That means that they're probably already made a decision that they want to list with me. So I 100% think you should include the seller's disclosure.
So do you, that's a great point. So then do you tailor your presentation or appointment accordingly? Like if you see it sitting there and filled out and there's a key, do you just go like sort of right for the assumptive close, or do you still kind of go through your marketing process and your presentation?
No, I'm going to go right for the close if I see it filled out. So I'm going to jump right now to the appointment. So basically at the appointment, you're going to be on time. Something I would tell you right now that I am actually sending a memo out to my team today is I would make sure you're wearing a mask and be really careful about, a lot of times they're not going to have a mask, right? It's their house. So be really careful about asking them, do you want me to wear a mask or not? Because depending on their behavioral type, they might be uncomfortable saying, yeah, I really want you to wear a mask. So just make sure you're really reading the situation right, and that maybe even, I thought about this today, was maybe even doing some kind of like quick questionnaire that they get before the appointment that asks them in a questionnaire, like a little jot form. In your home, would you like people inside your home to wear a mask? Because it's going to be a lot more comfortable for them to click yes or no on that form before you get there than when you walk in and you're in their face and you're like halfway taking off your mask. Do you want me to wear a mask or not? Because that could be, you know, a make or break it for getting a listing right now. Especially with how, unfortunately, how political it's also gotten. I don't know why people just can't be honest with everybody and everybody just embrace that, you know, people are comfortable about different things, but it's always the case. So that's just a side note. Be really careful and cognizant of that. Basically, when you get to the appointment, and this is just how I always did it and how the listing agents on my team do it and what works for us. Get there, we ask them if we can do a quick walk of the house, and you're going to tell them this is going to be quick. Maybe tell them 10 minutes. However you want to get across that it's going to be quick, because you don't want them thinking this is an hour tour of the house and that you want to see every nook and cranny and see how they color code their closet. So you're going to tell them up front, this is like a quick walk of the house just to get a quick walkthrough. And then while you're doing that, take any notes that are noteworthy for you that you want to remember, or anything that you want to make sure that you really make sure it gets addressed before it goes on the market. So once you're done your walk, it also gives you an opportunity to establish rapport, because if they're walking through their home with you, you're their guest and they want you to be comfortable. So I don't suggest sitting down at the table first. I suggest, because if you sit down at the table, then now it's an interview and you're the one being interviewed, and that's the rapport, versus if you walk through the house first, now you're more of a guest in their house. So then you'll just have them be more of a friendly tone often.
Can I go back and ask a question?
Sure.
So when you walk in the front door and you make your introduction, but don't you first go and put your things down at a dining room table or a kitchen table, so you can still you do want to take control. So you say, where would you like me to sit? And you put your stuff down and then you go right to the walkthrough.
Yeah, I'll say like I while I'm standing right there in the foyer, usually they'll like walk you to where they want you to go. They'll walk you to the kitchen typically is what they'll typically do. And I'll always say, great, well, first we'll do a quick 10-minute walk through the house. Where is a good place for me to drop my bag or whatever it is? But it really depends too on the season. Like now, you might not have anything to drop because I didn't bring a purse in with me. I always just brought, you know, a little black briefcase thing with a notepad in it, and I would just open it right up and we would start walking through. But if I have a jacket on, that's different. So, I mean, read that in the situation, but the point is that you don't want to sit down yet. You really want to walk the house first. It doesn't mean that you won't have some high D personality. So they go, no, I'm in control. I want to sit down and talk to you before we even walk the house. But when you can, which would be like 95% of the time, you can control the tone and what happens, the order of things, walk the house first. Then when you're done doing that and you're going to sit down, you want to ask them, did they have a chance to review the information that you dropped off? They're going to actually say, you dropped something off? Or they're going to say, oh, shoot, no, we didn't even get a chance to open it. Or they're going to say, oh, yeah, that was so great. Thanks so much for all that information. That was really fantastic. And then maybe even the seller's disclosure is filled out there for you. So for Carmen's question, if the seller's disclosure is filled out, then I'm going to say, great, you guys are on top of it. Thank you so much. I'm going to sit down and I'm going to say, so before we get to pricing and paperwork, did you have any other questions? But I will tell you that typically, even if the paperwork isn't filled out, I still am going to ask that question. Before we get to pricing and market data and paperwork, did you have any other questions for me? Because sometimes it's going to be, no, we really, we looked you up and we read your Zillow reviews and we're really impressed with all the questions you asked, and we're really impressed with all the houses that we know you sold, or really impressed with Susie Joe, you sold her house. No, we're just really anxious to look at the pricing. Great, now you can skip the whole 30-minute spiel on marketing. Or they're gonna have a specific question for you, and then you're gonna know what's important to them about the marketing or about the process that Drew had asked. Like, don't go into your whole process unless they ask you a question about your process yet. Because you don't wanna just start word vomiting to them about things that may not be important to them at all. And the whole time they only care about the price of their home. And they're not even going to be listening to what you're saying during your presentation, because they just want to know, what does this guy want to list my house at?
Hey, Lauren, this is Dan Hagan. What if you get to the home and for some reason now they're saying, hey, listen, I only have 15 minutes to walk through this. Do you try to get an appointment in, or do you say, let's reschedule?
Oh my gosh, I don't even know if that's ever happened. Has that happened to you?
It has in a past world with sales when I was in. But I'm wondering if it's good to hear that doesn't happen much to you, but I guess that means you might not have pre-qualified them up front. But what if for some reason, hey, we totally forgot about this, and they only say we only have 15 minutes to go through it? Would you just recommend it? And it's an honest, ask, I guess, from them. Would you just say, hey, I'd feel better if we do it tomorrow at 5 o'clock so you have more time, or what do you think you should do at that point?
15 minutes. I mean, if they said I really only have like 20 minutes, 15 minutes, you can barely do anything. But I think either way, no matter what time frame they said, I think my response would be, wow, okay, well, then are you ready to get right to the paperwork?
Yeah. All right. Yeah.
That's a perfect amount of time for us to get a listing contract signed, and we can probably even firm up your price too. But if we don't have time to finalize the price, why don't we just leave it blank and we'll put a note in here that we'll decide between X time frame.
Perfect. Good.
No matter what, Dan, you don't leave without the listing signed.
That's what I've been trained. Absolutely.
What other questions do you guys have about the appointment itself?
I think, how do you go through the comps?
So I'm gonna embarrass myself here because I haven't been on listing appointments since Bright, but with Trend, I did the 3-up report was the one that I used that I really liked because I felt like it gave me just like the perfect amount of information for each one, and I just put 3 in front of you on each page. I don't know if Bright gives you that option. But you really want to bring, I would say, anywhere from 6 to 8 comps, not too many more than that. And you want to go through your comps ahead of time and highlight and write notes that you want to make. So for example, you know, highlight finished basement or write notes on there like, you know, all new bathrooms, so that when they're going through or when you're going through and they're pointing anything out, you can say, keep in mind that one did have all new gorgeous bathrooms. Keep in mind this one had a spectacular outdoor space and pool and cabana, that kind of thing. But really you're going to go through and I don't do like addition and subtractions, like an appraisal or anything. I just am showing them what has sold similar to them in the last 3 to 6 months. If I have to go 12 months, I will. And we can talk a little bit more about pricing, because some of you guys had some more pricing questions, but we're going to be looking at ranges. We're not talking about picking a price down to $5,000 or down to $3,000. We're not trying to come up with a exact sale price. That's not what we're doing. We're trying to come up with a market list price that's going to get them the most activity depending on the market conditions. So right now you can probably price on the higher end. The market is also price sensitive, so you can't way overprice it. When I say the higher end, I mean based on if you have a decision to price it here or here, you can price on the higher end of that. And we'll talk about the pricing grid that we call it. On our team, you have to price on a pricing grid scale. You can't price some random number. Doesn't mean we never have. We've listed a couple homes before at some wacky prices because we just could not convince the sellers otherwise, and they were dead set and determined, and we knew it would still sell, so we took it. But it's a requirement on our team to price on pricing grid numbers, and what that means is pricing on numbers like 550, 575, 600. Your ideal, depending on the price of the home, we call them major price points and mini price points. And those are different depending on the price range of the home. So a home that's in, let's say, 400 plus price range, let's say 400 to 700. Your main price point is going to be $50,000 increments, then down to $25,000, and then down to $15,000. So ideally in that price range, you want to price at, especially if you're over 500, $50,000 price marks, because you're thinking about the kind of decisions that buyers in those price points are making and how are they making decisions, especially with how low the interest rates. They're probably not making a decision over $10,000 or even $20,000. in terms of how they're searching for their home. So again, this isn't what the house is going to sell for necessarily. This is where we're going to market the house at. So that makes it really easy when you're pricing the home and you're looking at your comps. You're not worrying about pricing. Do I price this at 508 or 518? No, we're talking about, do I price this at 500 or 550 or 525? In this market, we can go on that higher end of 550 if we can, if the market supports it, and if we're looking at the current competition and there's really nothing out there.
I see some questionable faces there. Does that make sense to people?
If you're in a lower price range, then like, let's say you have somebody and they just won't price it at 200. And let's say 225, ideally your 200 or your 225. If they won't do 200 and you know 225 is way too high, then if you have to, you price it at 2099 or 215, they're great. And what you're explaining to your client and why this is important is because you're capturing the biggest audience that you can. So ideally, so let's say you decide, like, have you guys ever seen people price a house at like 201? I have. Or 203. Have you ever seen a house listed at that price? 603. It's not often, but I see them. And once you learn the like pricing grid and that's how you price, you will really see them because they will stand out and they will drive you nuts. What happens when you price at 2049, 205? You then have ruled out all of the buyers who are searching up to 200. Is that your buyer? Is your client willing to take 195? If your client's happy with 195, then price it at 200. Not a penny more. So that you can capture that entire market of buyers that are capping their search at 200.
Because you can explain, Lauren, that at 200, everybody who's shopping between 175 and 200 sees it, and everybody shopping between 200 and 225 sees it. So you're capturing a $50,000 swing.
Right.
Makes sense.
Same thing with like 550. You're capturing 450 to 550 buyers. You're capturing 500 to 600 buyers. You're capturing 550 to 650 buyers. You're capturing the biggest amount, the biggest marketing pool that you can. Versus if you just, if you price at 558, you've rolled out anybody searching up to 550. Especially in this market, really in any market, but especially in this market, the market will adjust for the right price. So if they're worried and they're like, I just really feel like my house is worth like I just think 550 is a little low. I think my house is worth 555. My neighbor's got 550 and I have a nicer whatever. Price it at 550. The market will adjust for that.
Hey, Lauren, I got a quick question.
Yeah.
Are there stats on what people put into a search when they're looking online, meaning the price amount? Because that's exactly what I do. I usually put in a round number and I break it down between either 200, 25, 50, and so on up. So it's not, I think that's probably pretty common, but I'm wondering if there's any stats on that we could say, well, here's how typical people search.
I don't
major
know.
market.
Yeah, I don't know if there's stats. I just tell them this is what it is because I know it works. This is just how it is. And I know there's some home search sites where you can probably like type in or put in whatever you want. But a lot of the mobile apps, which is where most buyers are searching, a lot of the mobile apps, you have to like scroll and pick a price point. It doesn't go by every 1,000, you know?
Yeah.
Like, I think it's like every 20,000 maybe, or 50, whatever it is. Just, yeah, for something like that, I would just, tell your client, this is how it is. And it makes sense,
Yeah, I think to most people it would make sense just breaking it out that way. They probably wouldn't resist much. Yeah.
Yeah.
So Dan, the reason we did that, and this, I mean, we've been doing, I'm Cindy Dickerman, so long time ago, we would have such a difficult time getting price changes back in the 90s, and in different markets, everybody priced it, 159.9, 179.9, everybody had to have that 99 on there. And when we went from the listing books, like back in the, ancient dark ages, Dave Stillwell remembers this. We went away from the listing books and we went to the internet. We realized quite a few years in, oh my gosh, people shop on even numbers. Ta-da! So this whole pricing grid, there literally is a form with a grid, and you could get a copy of it from the Dickerman team. And when you see that grid and you see how to use it, you just show it to your clients about how the swing covers a bigger group of people. And the truth is, you're just going to capture more people in the net instead of fewer.
Yeah, I think that would be a powerful tool just in case you do get an objection, type of thing around there. So yeah, absolutely. That's good.
Yeah. And then there's a lot of scripts around that too. I mean, people say, I want to price higher. And you say, well, would you take 550? And they go, yeah, I'd take 550, but I want to negotiate. You say, well, if you're going to take 550, let's just tell everybody you'll take 550.
True.
Yeah. And I mean, we literally draw out, I don't know.
I do. I have got
Or
the
you
grid.
have, I mean, our team doesn't have a grid, but we just draw it out. So we like literally flip over after we're done looking at the comps. I would flip it over, go landscape wise on it, draw it out, and I would start writing, like if it's 400 price point, I would start writing the big numbers first, and just tell them these are our options.
Mm-hmm.
I'll say these are our options. Really, where we want to be is here or here. What do you think? And then if I can tell they're just like not happy with it, then I'll say, if we really need to, we can go with a mini price point, and I'll pick 15,000 or like 465. It's not as great as 450 or 475, but we'll do 465. But the worst thing is like we had a client a couple weeks ago, and they were insistent on listing at 770. Adamant. And we're like 775. We could not convince them to list for 775. And we're like, do you guys understand that at 770, at listing at 770, what you're doing is just negotiating against yourself $5,000. You just pulled $5,000 off the table against yourself, because no buyer, number one, is gonna see your house versus not see it at 770 versus 775. And no buyer is gonna make a decision to not physically come tour your house or make an offer of your house between 770 and 775. List your home at 775. And they were just like, they were the nicest people, but they were like, we just think that's greedy. It's just too much. It's not worth it. They would not. So that
I guess you come back to them and say, hey, someone offered 775, but I told them you take 770. So
I told them that would just be greedy. So
just so I'm hearing you right, if I was going to list a house and I was in my head, I was thinking 235 was probably the right number, you would really suggest 225 or 250, something like that.
Ideally, but 235, if 250 is too high.
I think so.
And if 225 is much too low, or if they won't go that low, then 235 is okay. It's just, it's a starting point of where you really want to go. And then if you have to, then you go with one of those mini price points. So 235 would be your mini price point between 225 and 250. And it allows you to have an easier pricing discussion, and you guys aren't talking about, oh, should we list it at 5? You know, should we list it at, you know, 229.9 or 232? Like, it gets rid of that conversation. We're not even having that conversation. If you don't want to do 25, and if we know 250 is too high, how do you guys feel about 235? They're like, we're great. We're good with that. Great. Done.
Lauren, can I give you a real world example and get your take on it?
Yeah.
So this house is under contract right now. We originally went on the market at 425, which I thought was kind of a stretch. And, you know, it was a discussion I had with the seller. So they were comfortable sort of testing the market a little bit. We did a price reduction. They felt very, very strongly about going to 410. I kind of pushed them on it. We did end up going at 410. And then we had to do another price reduction. And the discussion was, do we go to 400 or do we go to 399? And I hate the 99s as well, but I sort of felt like we were already at 425 and 410, and we just didn't get the pop of showings that we want. I mean, we got literally one incremental showing when we went to 410, even though we had a ton of a ton of eyeballs from reverse prospecting. So I felt like going to 399 was a better move, and it would just drive a lot more traffic. And given that scenario, so you 425, then 410, where would you have gone next?
So I think you're okay at 400, or if you were going to do the 99, I would do 399.9. I couldn't hear you 100% clear, so I don't know if that's what you said or if you said 399. Definitely 399.9. Add that extra 900, because if not, you're just negotiating $900 off yourself. You know, like, right? And you all know how many times we get in fights over $900 in inspection items. So keep the 900 when you can. I think you're okay either way. Reason being, you said that you had already tried out that 410. So you already know that you're like, the buyers that are looking 4 and up aren't attracted to you for this house. So I think you're fine either way. I will say that if we haven't been on the market yet, you definitely want to go with the 400 even, because you're going to capture the 400 to 450 people, which is unlikely. Not as likely you'll find your buyer in that price range versus the 350 to 4, because a lot of times the 4 to 450, especially with the low rates, they're going to push up in their price range, not down. But another reason is because it gives you the opportunity. And I don't know if Bright does this, but I know that Trend, when you used to change the price, no matter what the price was, it would shoot out to people as like a update. So sometimes when the market wasn't what it is right now, if we had a listing and we were confident that it was really priced correctly, it just was, kind of sitting there because the timing was wrong or whatever, and you listed at 400, you can then do like a market kind of refresh, basically. Switch your pictures around, change out the front photo, do some more Facebook marketing, email blasts, and change that price at that point to $399.9. You're only lowering it. You're only doing a price improvement of $100, but it gets out in front of people. Versus if you start off at $399.9, you don't really have that opportunity.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So obviously the goal is to get the listing contract signed. Ask them at the end of your appointment, based on everything we've talked about, we're in agreement on price. It sounds like you're 100% comfortable with everything we've discussed. Are you ready to get started? And if they say, no, we're not, you say, great. What would it take you to be ready to get started? And see if you can overcome that objection at that time. If it's just that they want to talk about it, then seriously, tell them, I totally understand that. I actually have a couple voicemails I need to catch up on. I'll go head outside and sit in my car for like 10 minutes. You think that's enough time? And then I'll pop back in 10 minutes. Some people aren't okay with that and they'll be like, yeah, no, but you try. And if you feel like there's some tension with it, then say, I wouldn't be good at my job if I didn't ask more than once. We can go back if anyone thinks of any questions on the listing appointment, but we're at 3:25, so I'm going to start wrapping up. But just a couple of things for you guys that we do. If for some reason you didn't get it signed, then that same day, send a personal note so that they get it in the next 48 hours, hopefully while they're making their decision. Once they do sign, we send them flowers or some kind of welcome to working with us gift to their home. You're going to follow up with them. Oh, you know what we go back so we don't do a 2-part listing appointment, meaning we want to get the listing contract signed in step 1, but we do go back a second time for staging. So whether it's you going back yourself or whether you have a stager on your team or you have a stager that you work with, we do send a stager out to walk through the house room by room and tell them exactly what they need to do to get their house ready, which is usually just removing a lot of stuff. And then you're going to follow up with them, see if they need any help with that list until it's ready. Then you're going to schedule photos, and then you're going to send them a final photo prep checklist. Prior to photos, it's reminders of make sure your cars are out of the driveway, make sure that you have everything removed from your kitchen countertops, your drying mat is removed, make sure in all your bathrooms, your bath rugs and your bath towels are removed. Don't worry about laundering and putting up fresh towels, just get rid of them. You don't need towels. And then we do meet the photographer at the property in case there's any last minute tweaks. Once you get the photos back, the photos and the order of the photos is very important. You don't need to put 20 photos of the exterior as the first 20 photos. Buyers want to get to the point. Does it have the kitchen I like or not? Next, 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 next. So 1 exterior, front, maybe 2. If it's got like an awesome pool or something that's a really amazing feature that's in the back of the house that you want to show them, fine, include that. Foyer, and then get right to the best room of the inside of the main level, whether that's the family room or the kitchen is new, whatever the nicest photographed room is of the main level, go to that area first and then make your way through the rest of the house and then upstairs, basement, if it's finished. If it's not finished, don't put basement pictures unless there's like amazing organized storage units that are included or something, or there's like a cool batting cage that the seller is including, or a cool home gym that the seller is including. But other than that, don't include basement photos or inside the garage photos. And then if you have more exteriors that you want to show them at the end. Even if they're front exteriors, show them at the very end. And that's it. Any questions?
That was great. Thank you for sharing all that.
You're welcome.
Yeah, very helpful.
Good. All right, guys. Thanks for tuning in. I hope you got
Thank
stuff out
Thank
of
you,
it.
Lauren.
Thank
Take
you,
care.
Lauren.
Bye, guys. Have a great week.
Take care.